Makes sense. That's it. I'd like to call to order the March 30th, 2022, 5:30 p.m. workshop. Roll call, Carrie, please.
Mayor Preden?
I am here.
Council President Conley? Here. Councilor Blum?
Here.
Councilor Letts?
Here.
Councilor Ross?
Present. Everybody's in the room. It's crazy. And it's very loud, too.
Yes.
You're welcome.
I can hear myself. Anything. All right. First item on the agenda is Deschutes County Sheriff's Office update. Lieutenant Davis, welcome.
Thank you. I don't have a whole lot other than we're getting ready for spring, and we've ordered and received 2 new patrol bikes for our bike patrol, and we will be doing a bike patrol class for additional deputies to get certified on May 11th, and then we'll open that up to other law enforcement agencies around Central Oregon so they can have other officers certified. But we'll host May 11th. It'll be the same class that we did last year, which is a 1-day class, and hopefully get more of our deputies certified. So when we have special events in Sisters, other than just our City of Sisters deputies, we can have outside deputies come in and work overtime shifts or special events in Sisters on bike patrol. So trying to get more people involved in our outreach and community policing through bike patrol. So
awesome.
Yeah.
That'll get them familiar with our area as well, you know.
Oh yeah.
And they'll want to join. That's what'll happen.
That's right. We're recruiting for sure.
Fantastic.
That's all I have.
That's all the new update you have. Wow. Anybody have any questions for Lieutenant Davis? Comments?
Well, that was really good news. Are they a special bike, or is it just a regular mountain bike that you picked?
We bought them at Blazing Saddles.
Yep. So
which we bought all of our bikes there, and they're these are hardtails, 29-inch, just a standard mountain bike.
That's what I figured. I was curious.
Front suspension and just a good all-around bike that can go off-road or on the roads too.
So you have a little air siren on them to make it work to have to pedal real fast.
We don't have a siren, but we are adding red and blue lights and
Really?
which we didn't have before for safety and things like that. And
Cool.
so if we do want to do a traffic stop, we technically could, but we probably won't do that much. But we did have a couple last year. We actually made an arrest last year off of bike patrol. So it's good to identify ourselves.
I'm actually very happy that you're doing it. I think it's a great idea. And it community sees, I think officers are more approachable too to the community when they're on a bike.
Yes, the car is definitely a hindrance to communication sometimes. So. Okay.
Awesome.
So I sent to council the email that you CC'd me on to Jeremy and David, who are the new county health department resources. Have you heard back from them? Do you have anything set up in April?
April 20th. Yeah, they're coming to our briefing that we have on Wednesdays, and so all of our Sisters crew will be able to meet up with them. And I'll invite John Souls. That's
Perfect.
Glad you brought that up. So I'll invite
Perfect.
John Souls from the Forest Service just to join us so that we can meet up with them and try to figure out how that referral process is going to work for communication when we meet up with folks that are in need of services, whether that's going to be just a phone call to the county employees, or whether it's going to be some kind of an email, or however they want to receive the information. We'll hammer that out.
Could I tag along to that one too?
Absolutely.
Okay,
yeah.
great. Thanks.
Yep. I'll send you an invite.
Perfect. Yeah, appreciate it.
Nancy, you got anything? No. Well, thank you I hope everybody's happy and healthy.
Okay. Yep, great.
Thank you. All right, city charter reviews next. Looks like Carrie's gonna start.
Yeah, I'll start that off, and Jeremy and I will tag team on this if you guys have some questions he's here to answer about. So what we're doing tonight, this is our 4th meeting regarding the charter update, and we're looking at the suggested charter amendments and getting a recommendation from council to move forward with developing the resolutions, which are really the ballot title and the ballot question. So in your packet, you had kind of the summary points of why we're doing this. We've been in conversations about this, but really this piece will kind of clean up the charter for us is the easiest way to put it. What I'd like to do, I'm going to get this to Jeremy in a second, but we'll go through and each item I'm just going to read what we have here, and if you guys have any questions, let's take them hopefully in the moment. And Jeremy's here to answer those as well. And then he's going to speak to how this will look and how it could look as it goes to the ballot measures. So I'll start going through this and we'll see what we get. Does that work for everybody?
Yeah.
Okay, so first one, and this is not in any section, but just remove any gender-specific pronouns throughout the charter. I found that when we actually looked through all these sections, a lot of those were being removed just by what we're cleaning up. Any questions on?
So I wanted to ask, I know we're being encouraged to use they instead of he, she, but we're not using plural verbs. So that sounds very awkward. Is it appropriate to change to plural verbs if we're going to use they instead of he, she?
And use them?
No,
Use,
use a
Yeah.
plural verb.
yeah. Why don't you give me an example of what you're,
They are versus they is.
Yeah, I mean, it's,
oh,
if
Yeah.
it was he, she is,
yes.
Yeah.
now it's they is.
I think, and hopefully I hit it when I did the red line, and I might have missed some, but I did try to work through
Oh,
that.
okay.
And adjust from the red line so that it made sense, so that it didn't read incorrectly.
Okay,
So we can go back through and adjust
I
that, but
must
yes.
have seen one,
You
so
must-
I'll.
If you
I'll
did,
check.
yeah, let me know where it is, because we can definitely go through and
Oh, and
adjust.
maybe it was in the minutes as opposed to in this.
Okay.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, I've read them there before.
Any other questions on that part? So section 3, expansion of city services, right now requires a vote of the electorate, and the recommendation is removal and adopt those rules in the code. So basically, if water or sewer went outside the city limits, it would need to be a vote of the people. I don't know that we have a whole lot outside of the city limits, perhaps except the wastewater treatment plant. But that would be worked into code where it would potentially, council would have that approval or some version of that. And in all of these, Paul has reviewed, there's a lot of public works pieces in here, and Paul has reviewed these and given his kind of go ahead on those as well. Any questions on there?
No.
Okay. Section 13, council rules set by ordinance revised to resolution for administrative flexibility. When we do any updates to council rules, it's a little confusing because some have been set by ordinance, some have been set by resolution, and there's no real clear path. So we'd like to just make that very clear that we can do that by resolution. Questions? Okay. Section 24 is a lot of cleanup of outdated pieces. So 24.4, remove the city manager furnishing a bond. It's outdated and it's covered by insurance at this point. 24.5, stated within 6 consecutive months after a vacancy occurs in the office to fill, and we've moved that to 12 months. 6 at this point in time seems like it might not be long enough if you're bringing a consultant and doing those other things. So if people that were on the council remember, when Rick was here in the interim position, we actually had to appoint him as the city manager after 6 months because the charter said it had to be that way. So we figured 12 months gives us a little more flexibility. 24.6J, the condition the city manager serve as the city recorder, recommending that Corey doesn't have to do that and removal with cleanup.
Oh, I think he has to keep on doing that.
That seems a little self-serving to me.
It does.
I'm going to hand him the minutes after this.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
24.9, we moved again to 12 months for a limited duration interim city manager position, just to be in line with the vacancy position. So moving that to 12 months as well. Section 30, canvass of returns. This is actually perfect timing because we want to remove the entire section. It's governed by state law, and the state law changed this year and it doesn't match our charter. So we would have some issues going into the November election regardless. So we have to follow what the ORSs say, and this will just make us continue to do that. Because I think it says within 10 days, and they won't be ready within 10 days this year. So based on how they're accepting ballots. Section 33, nominations, and recommend removal of the entire section and adopt rules by ordinance. So those will allow some flexibility in how people can apply, not apply, but run for city council. So you can do the same type of rules, but it allows some flexibility and maybe building in some more guardrails as well, if you would like to. Section 38 is on improvements and recommend full removal of that. Section 40 is on bids, and that was recommended a full removal. And section 42 was system development charges and would recommend the complete removal of that as well. So the nominations piece, going back to section 33, we would probably run congruent, and that's in the timeline with the measures, is have an ordinance run along. So if this did pass, that ordinance would become effective simultaneously, so that we didn't have any dead space when we didn't know what was going to happen. Any questions on any of those pieces?
I have a question on the
Sure.
improvements removal. I don't have a problem with it, but I'm wondering how we're now covering those sort of issues that this was intended to address.
So back when we had some of the conversations early on about charter revisions, one of the overarching recommendations that City Attorney Jeremy Green referenced is that council can codify policy via ordinance. And we have done a lot of work actually in the last few years, updating our city code about public improvements and various requirements that development will trigger. So that's the high level explanation for removing this from the charter, and then making sure, if we haven't already, like Carrie was saying, contemporaneously adopting any provisions that we want to stay effective.
And Section 40 is already covered by state law.
That is correct.
Yeah.
Okay,
And our public contracting code for that matter.
believe me, I know.
Any other questions on moving through those pieces?
No.
Okay, so Jeremy's going to speak to how this comes before the voters and the different options that we have for that.
Yes, so you've got multiple options as far as how we want to move this along and ultimately present it to the voters. One option is we simply have it all contained in under one ballot title and provide the voters one opportunity to say yay or nay. The other option is to break it down into separate ballot titles and have them approve on, or I should say rather, vote on each independent ballot title. That usually is strategically effective if you have, for example, proposed changes to a charter that are politically sensitive, run the risk of failure. When you combine those situations under one and you've got one politically charged issue, you run the risk of having it all fail, right? By the inclusion of that political issue, perhaps, or that change in one ballot title. And so the strategy would be to perhaps do multiple ballot titles. In this particular case, because I see a lot of this, I would say 95% of it, if not more, is administrative and cleanup. I see no reason why the city should incur the cost and the expense to go through multiple ballot titles. I think we can do it very efficiently and effectively in one ballot title. And so that's my suggestion to you all, but I'm more than happy to answer any questions that you may have about it.
So you said 95% not politically charged. What's, in your opinion, the 5% that could be?
No, not politically charged, 95% administrative.
Gotcha.
The rest, the remaining 5% arguably could be substantive, meaning legally substantive.
I understand.
And so an example of that, arguably the bids is a legally substantive change. As we know, we actually have a code provision that speaks to that, but by its removal, it is substantive rather. Certainly the system development charge removal is substantive. So that would be an example of the 5%, if you will.
Okay.
The rest of it, for example, having Corey serve as city recorder, we know for years the city manager has not. We probably should have done that a long time ago. So I see it as being cleanup. Does that make sense?
Oh, makes sense to me now.
Yeah, oh, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I was just going to follow up with, how do you educate the public on the two issues you just addressed so that it's a non-issue and it's clear that we have policies and procedures already in place? We're just cleaning this up.
Beautiful question. And I would respond by saying that is the purpose of the ballot title summary and explanation. If you all provide us the opportunity to draft the ballot title, you will see a summary and an explanation that tries to communicate to the public, to the voters, not only what's being changed, but why. And in my mind, if we do a good job of that, the likelihood of a passage and more importantly, an understanding of what's motivating the change will likely take place and will likely get it approved.
So would that be legalese or layperson term?
So it's best, in my opinion, to draft with as little legalese as possible in ballot titles, explanations, and summaries. The more convoluted you make it, the more people are like, well, I don't really understand it, and therefore, no. So we will make it as layman as possible, and certainly you all will be involved in that process. What I'm envisioning is that I will work with Carrie and Corey to draft the resolutions, the titles, the summaries, and explanations, and then we will have a vetting process with you, the council, and we'll work through it. We can ask questions, you all can ask questions about it, propose language tweaks. We want you to be involved in it. And I also believe, as a counterpart to that process, we should do some public outreach and do as much communication to the public as well, as far as what we're changing with the charter and why that change is necessary.
Thanks.
So on that, I guess the question is, because the next, if you look at the timeline, we're bringing this back hopefully to you on May 25th, which is the draft of the resolution and the amending language, which is what we just talked to. Do you want to discuss whether you want to do it in one or in multiple measures? That's one of the questions that we need to answer tonight.
How much does each measure cost if we split it up?
Do you want to respond?
You go ahead.
Round numbers, each one is likely going to be around $1,000, if not more.
Personally, I don't see a need to break it up into pieces. So I'm for a one shot. So that's my head nod.
I think I'm with you, Mr. Mayor. Been down this path many times in my career. Back in the days of the A and B ballot for funding schools, A always got voted on, B never got voted on. You know, it's that kind of a game. And I think that we are spending the public's money when we do this. And if it were to be broken apart, I would see no more than two, but I'm very comfortable with one. And with that in mind, I'd like to see what the language looks like. And we have the ability at that point in time to see if we think we need to split something out.
Absolutely.
Right, and through the rumor mill that goes around town, if an issue that's in here starts to bubble, then we can look at whether we can explain it well enough or whether we think we should separate it.
Absolutely.
I think there's a chance the SDCs might bubble. There's, because they bubbled enough to get in, so somebody had to have, really been upset about that in order to get that in there. So I think that once we get further down the road, if there's one that really looks like an outlier, we can pull it and have two.
Jennifer? You good with one?
Yeah, one's fine. And all of these things will be in there, including like the gender specific pronouns?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Every little change has to be
Yeah.
blessed, okay.
Yep. So one of the if you look at the timeline, one of the things in the timeline, we built in a lot of extra room. So bringing this to the workshop on the 25th still leaves us plenty of time to bring it back for approval at the end of June, and then get it filed with enough time to move forward. So we did start this early for that purpose, so you guys would have some feedback on that.
But it's still on the November ballot.
It is on the November ballot. Correct?
We have about a 35 to 40 day buffer, which is wonderful, because you never know what could happen as you develop these ballot titles.
Well, I want to say, when I read the charter through with a red line, I was surprised at some of the language that was in there that was in the charter that really doesn't belong.
100%.
Yeah.
And this is cleaning it up. Future city councils and city managers and the community, I think, will thank us if we can make this as clean as possible. And
It's shorter too.
well, and there's things in here that should not be in the charter. They really are administrative in the way you run it and the flexibility to run a government. So I'm in favor of what I'm seeing, especially the part about removing Corey. Oh, that wasn't removing Corey, that was removing.
Wow, okay. So I think you have head nods all around.
Wonderful.
Great. So we will see you again at the end of May with this topic. We'll work
If
on
we're
it.
not all on vacation, yes?
Perfect. All right, thank you.
Where are we going?
Yeah. We're we're going to
It
Gary's.
depends. You're asking about next
My
year
house is
or
empty most.
October.
Not really.
All right.
Barbecue in the backyard.
Thank you, council.
Thanks, Jim.
Thank you.
You want to stick around or not?
Why don't you hang for
Hang
a
out?
little
Okay.
longer? Yeah,
Yep.
just, we're with the
One
next
more
agenda item, and I won't jump ahead. I'll let you move us there
No,
first.
go ahead. All right. Thanks. The next item up is destination management. Oh, Corey, there it is right there. Why don't you give us an update on destination management?
Thank you. So, yeah, the purpose of this, there's a few components of this agenda item, and one does involve Jeremy potentially, so that's why I would like him to stick around just a little bit. In the staff report, did a little just trip down memory lane as it relates to the conversations we've been having over the last couple of years, whether it's the Sisters Country Vision, whether it's the business survey we recently conducted in the fall of 2020, the work last spring and summer as it related to the visitor opportunity survey and destination scan, and then obviously the conversations and direction that you all have provided in the last few months in the first part of 2022. So the second page is based on those discussions and direction, the timeline that we're working off of right now to implement the creation of a new destination management organization. And the first step is creating the nonprofit itself. And we're really targeting spring, April, May, and June to be taking the necessary steps to do that. And so, not to dive into the details today, but we will be getting clarity, working with the consultant, Kristen, working with kind of a preliminary project management team of some local business owners that have been interested in participating and were involved in the destination management work last spring and summer. And just getting some input to help Jeremy shape what the bylaws and the other components of the nonprofit are going to be, the critical language. So in terms of just timeline, Jeremy, can you just walk them through real briefly kind of what the steps are that council will need to take to accomplish that in terms of forming a nonprofit? I mean, high level, very 10,000 foot level, in terms of complexity, in terms of timing, just very basic.
Sure. In terms of complexity, it's not all that complex. Essentially, what we will do is we will prepare, once we get some of these issues resolved or clarified, I should say, we will prepare the governing documents of the nonprofit, which generally consists of articles of incorporation, which are filed with the Oregon Secretary of State. We will prepare bylaws, which is the governing document of the nonprofit. And then we will prepare any organizational minutes that are necessary, basically a ratification or a discussion of an approval, I should say, of the initial board of directors, the initial officers, things of that nature. So formalities, or corporate formalities is what they're referred to as. Depending upon the type of nonprofit we go with, there may be some IRS filings that we'll assist you all with to ensure appropriate tax designation. But other than that, there's really not a whole lot to it. We would bring those documents back to you all for approval. Once they've been approved, we would commence the appropriate filings. You'd make your appointments, and we are off and running. It's very simple.
So yeah, that's the vehicle, and obviously we need to decide the details of the language that will be sort of the engine giving that vehicle direction, goals, direction, and purpose. And so this timeline that lays out that process through spring and into early summer, we think is very doable. It's flexible to some extent, but moving further through the timeline, it really that's the important part, is thinking about how busy we know the business community and tourism season is in the summer, trying to get this finished before summer, and then allowing recruitment to occur over summer and then allowing the organization to be fully functional come fall. And so that is partly why we want to keep the momentum moving this spring and into early summer.
Can we do it time-wise?
Yeah, yes. Yeah, I would say so. We feel good about that. I mean, this
kind of
is
for both you and council, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, as you all know, this is uncharted territory for us. It's not uncharted territory, as we've heard from other communities. And so we feel confident we have a good team in place to be able to move through this, but each month we'll be having different conversations and gaining more information and bringing some decision points back to you all as well, especially in these next 3 months. Any questions on just kind of that timeline, the process at a high level right now? Because obviously we will be diving into the details later.
What is the relationship between this nonprofit and the council? Do we tell them what we want and what we expect, or do they tell us what they need and we just provide the money?
Do you mean both at the onset of the nonprofit and also ongoing, over the course of future years, or both, or just in general?
Oh, probably both.
Okay, so that is one thing that's sort of interesting about the approach is that, the city is creating the nonprofit, and that's what Jeremy just outlined in terms of the articles of incorporation, bylaws, etc. But once that organization is created and the board of directors are appointed, it is its own ship out to sail. It's a separate legal entity. And the relationship that we will have with them will be contractual. So we will then, at some point, after the organization is created and before they have bills to pay, we will need to enter into a contract saying, hey, here's the services we expect, here's the reporting we expect, here's transparency, it's any and all terms and conditions that we want. And then obviously also the financial component of, here's annually what the contract amount is. So that is a whole nother component of this process that we'll be going through. My expectation is we'd be dealing with that over the summer. To some extent, not negotiating, but working with the nonprofit and the new board of directors to get that in place. But I mean, essentially we'll be, as we do with all of our contracts, driving that. So, and then whether it's a 1-year contract or a 3-year contract, I mean, that'll be the relationship moving forward. And when I say 1 year or 3 year, I mean, obviously we're looking at a long-term relationship, but at its onset, is it a 1 year with renewing, or is it a 3 year with extensions, so on and so forth?
With possible benchmarks or whatever, depending on.
Absolutely.
MOU or whatever. Is it what is the contract going to be?
It'd be a professional service. Well, we're looking at potentially a grant agreement. Yeah, because it's not a public contract. We're not putting it out to bid. We're making
It's a grant agreement.
Yeah, thank you.
And
I don't want to.
No, that's perfect. That's perfect.
But it's a grant agreement. As it relates to control and direction and having input, the way to do it is initially with your organizational documents. We can establish general parameters and general policy directives within the bylaws. If you want ongoing control and representation, we can talk through ways that you could perhaps have that. One such example, and I'm not advocating anything, I'm just giving you all information, would be to require, for example, city consent before any bylaw revisions are implemented by the incoming board of directors. I mean, there are ways that you all meaning the city, can have some control over the nonprofit's operations by virtue of those types of arrangements. We can talk about pros and cons of doing so as well.
And maybe a little less formal or a little lower bar to clear. We have at least conceptually talked about having a city council member being on the board, whether it's voting or non-voting, and then also obviously having the city manager as ex officio to be involved in the conversations and help influence or, be proactive in those discussions.
And in my mind, that's where a lot of the discussion and input needs to occur at the council level. Corey's identified, we'll call it issues that we need to ultimately flesh out, and such as developing a primary purpose, developing board representation or composition. Who do you want to be on that board? Do you always want a seat at the table? I would think you would. And so we would develop that within the bylaws. So we've got a lot of work to do as far as issue spotting and getting issues resolved, so to speak. But once those items are addressed and discussed at the council level, then I think Corey will turn me loose and I'll draft the appropriate documents. Yes.
I think two things. First of all, very comfortable with what I'm hearing. Ultimately, down the road, the council will have the ability to choose to re-grant or not to re-grant at any given point in time. But I also think that we need to honor and somehow memorialize the relationship between this group and the new group that would be formed, whether it's ex officio or whether it's somebody from us on there. Sometimes just to be sure that everything keeps going in the right direction, and that we have council changes and we have changes in the community, that potentially we don't have somebody come in and attempt to tip the card over and go in a different direction without the council really being aware that that's occurring. So I don't see that happening, but the point is that we're looking at something that's going to be around for a while, we hope, and that means that most of the faces of this table may change.
Corey, correct me if I'm wrong, though, one of the things that we're gonna do is we're gonna make this codified enough in language to be rigid, but at the same time, have it be flexible enough so we can maneuver around down the road if parts of it work or parts of it don't work, and things like that, kind of like we've done with other relationships in the past, right?
Yeah, that's a great point. I think we all would agree that we might have some past experience, but we're not tourism experts on the cutting edge of, how to do destination management. And so, and we're not, some of us are business owners, but, we're not the business owners in the community. And so we want to really empower them to be advising and guiding the executive director and resource allocation in terms of making decisions around promotion, development, sustainability, et cetera. And so, to your point, we have to get this built enough, but then we have to say, hey, it's really for you all over the first 6 months, 12 months, 18 months to develop a strategic plan and really catalyze, what this organization is going to be and where it's going to go.
Sounds good.
Yep.
How much work, I guess I have two questions. How much of the heavy lifting is Crosscurrent going to be doing versus what, we need to be doing, the city or the council and for example, in the, coming up with a purpose and the name and bylaws and stuff like that, are we doing research on, other organizations so we can cut and paste and not reinvent the wheel?
I've been doing research for months and have files and examples, and Kristen and I have been working together.
I know you were going to say.
We've been working behind the scenes on this pretty extensively, so it would not be a come forward with just a blank slate. For certain, we've got some groundwork already done, and we continue to do that every week.
Great. And how are you feeling about it? Do you feel like you've got enough good stuff that we can?
Yeah,
approach?
and actually going to that Oregon Tourism Conference was huge because I made a lot of connections and got some more things sent to me, and it was super beneficial in that regard. I also found out how well thought of Kristen is at Crosscurrent, which was was great working with her, but it really kind of solidified that. She is very well respected within the field, so I think we've got the right person. I'm very comfortable with the examples we have. I made contact with what is right now the latest developed destination management organization in the state out of Josephine County. I talked to her. she sent me a bunch of their documents, and we will soon be the newest. So a lot of good contact network. So yes, I feel very comfortable where we are.
So is there a sense at all that whether there are people who fit the niche of being the executive directors of DMOs out there? So it shouldn't be real hard to find somebody?
That's a great
Or is it
question.
depending on the salary?
I think there's a lot of factors, as with recruiting potentially any position, that it behooves us that we are a destination, right? Deschutes County and obviously Sisters in particular. But yeah, we're going to need to make sure that the organization is well funded and they're able to, pay a competitive salary to be able to attract someone. But I can't remember who I was talking to earlier today about it, but just at a high level, I would imagine that there's going to be a lot of folks who are looking at this and saying, wow, what an opportunity to, over 3 years, 5 years or whatnot, really be able to put your fingerprints on something amazing in a very special place. I mean, we have way more opportunities than challenges. We have some challenges too, but really all signs point to this being successful and really building a lot of partnerships and elevating across the board. It's going to take
ground floor.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's going to take 12 months, 18 months, 24 months. I mean, it's going to take some time, but there's also going to be some early wins. I think we're pretty confident about that and successes.
Do you have anything?
I was just going to reiterate what Corey had said, and when the Visit McMinnville people came over 4 months ago, before they spoke to council, they also said that it would be an easy position to fill in their mind because of the location, the opportunity, and they gave us ideas for a salary that I thought were reasonable, but we haven't discussed salary or anything yet because we're at the beginning of the beginning, but they thought it would be an easy fill.
With probably great candidates. I
With
think.
great
Yeah,
candidates,
I
yeah,
think so too.
yeah.
And no offense to McMinnville, but they might be part of it. You never know.
Yes,
So
yeah.
you never know,
We have to put in a winery.
you know. Go ahead.
No, please.
I just had one kind of final question, and it's just more of a curiosity to me. When they become their own entity, who will be their legal representation? Will we encourage them to use you guys, or can they decide to use anybody?
They can
Or
decide to use anybody.
okay,
Yeah.
so they really are.
Yeah.
Separate.
Yeah.
100%.
Once they're pushed off the dock, they are their own thing. Okay. Yeah. Just wondering. You know.
No, it's a good question.
But they know where the money comes from.
Well, I think that's always going to be the case, and not in a bad way. So.
Any other questions on anything we've talked about to this point? I've got one other component.
Okay.
So as you know, we had a RARE, Resource Assistance for Rural Environment, AmeriCorps member, Amy Shoup, with the city, not last year, but the year before, and ended up hiring her full-time as our assistant planner. And, one of the things we heard then and have continued to stay in touch with that program and with Travel Oregon is that Travel Oregon actually has a strong partnership with that program to place RARE members in communities to work on tourism-specific projects. And now the burgeoning sort of field or approach of destination management. So we met with Alexa Carey a couple weeks ago, and she's in charge of their destination development program. And big picture, also met with the RARE program coordinator, Titus, and we have Carrie's put together an application, kind of a placeholder that we need to submit in the next couple of days, but to bring on a RARE AmeriCorps member to supplement the executive director in the first 11 months of this organization, especially because that ED and the board will need to understand, hey, do we need a full-time person? Do we need 2 full-time people? Do we need 1 full-time and 1 contracted? What's the arrangement? And we had the program, RARE program's great. We had such great success with Emmy. And we built a good relationship with them that we feel pretty confident we could get someone good in that role. But, the organization doesn't exist yet. So really, we would be submitting the application. We would be the supervising entity, and we would need to cover some of the costs associated with that. So we just wanted to get kind of a head nod, at least sounds good, makes sense, let's submit the placeholder application. And then we still need to go through a month or two of kind of vetting that, refining the job description, and really getting selected to be a host organization. But, it was Carrie's idea, and it really makes a lot of sense and they generally start, the second week of September. So again, if we could stay on this timeline, the timeline could be really good. Any quick thoughts on that?
Do it.
Do it, yeah.
Supportive.
Makes sense?
Yeah.
And it's an 11-month program or 12
Yeah.
month? Okay.
Yeah.
September through end of July, usually.
And so they would be our city's employee the whole time, they wouldn't move over?
Well, we would have the contract with Rare and with AmeriCorps, but kind of like how Emmy's time was split between the city and the comprehensive plan update and the vision and COIC. Emmy spent a lot of time working directly with Janelle as a supervisor. So I think early on, obviously, as long as we're on track with the timeline, maybe the first month or so, or more, we would be supervising. But then, as they got more involved in those projects, the supervision would sort of shift. But I think it could be a really interesting way to just keep that partnership and communication really tight early on too, over that first year. And then I'd be remiss if I didn't mention it, but that's probably 60% of what we would envision the Rare doing, and then possibly 20-25% with just vision support as well, which has tourism. I'm on a roll here. Tourism connections. And then the final piece is just professional development for them. So, but we'd have opportunity to refine that, but that's the high level thought process.
Can we pay for them out of the TLT then?
Potentially. We might also be able to get a grant from Travel Oregon to support about a quarter of the cost or a third of the cost. So we're optimistic about that, but we won't know more on that probably until end of April or early May would be my guess.
Did Amy's position have a grant when she was a Rare?
We did.
Yeah.
Ford Family Foundation grant for $10,000 for that.
Nice. Yeah. Couldn't remember. Sorry. So.
But Alexa, it was good to hear both the Rare folks and Alexa with Travel Oregon excited about the opportunity. They felt like it would be a good fit, really valuable. They want it to be a win-win for both sides, right? Educational and boots on the ground, hands-on experience for the Rare member, but also beneficial for the host community and organizations.
Well, these positions are also special, obviously, and they can turn somebody that we don't know into somebody we like very much and might hire, right?
Correct.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Or they might hire.
Yep.
Correct. Another organization. So
Exactly.
I'm for heading down that path.
Sounds good.
Okay. Well, at a minimum, we will have a once a month update along this timeline. It might get to the point where we're having every council meeting when we get into May and June. So just know that that's the timeline we're working on, and Nancy, Councilor Conley, as the liaison to the chamber and to tourism, has been involved in some of the meetings that we've had, and we're having another one next Friday. So just a heads up there as well, if you ever want to talk with her, or talk with myself or Carrie a little bit more in
Or
between.
come along.
Yeah, that too.
Not yet. Give us one more meeting.
That's all I had.
Any follow-up? No, I think we're all excited. So let's keep going.
Cool.
All right. We got about 15 minutes. We can do a couple updates and stuff, maybe?
Well, you
want to take the
I would take a break, and then you can. Well, we have Jeremy here. You can pick his brain on anything else if you need to.
All right, we'll do that. We'll take a 15-minute break. Thank you. Adjourned.
I do.
Anybody on the,
He's into the
Huh.